All right, Tony. So this conversation is going to be a little bit spicy. And here's why it's going to be spicy. It's because today we really talk about the motives, like what motivates people to get in the gym. So on any given day, when I'm scrolling on Instagram, right? There's no doubt that there's some kind of sex appeal that is there for guys to get back in the gym, and the same thing for the ladies, right? And they, I've heard it said like there's like usually three things that are going to motivate, in this case, since you work primarily with men, to get back in the gym, right? It's going to be a combination of sex, money, or status, right? Some combination of all three, right? And in whatever order it's going to come into as well. So that being said, there's a list of questions that I think are on people's minds that I kind of want to just run by you in rapid fire. And then some of them I'm going to begin to kind of zoom in on, because I just know people in their minds are trying to answer these questions for themselves. Okay. So that being said, let's really start out with this question. Again, in order for me to get the revenge body, right, which is what people really are secretly looking at the videos to figure out, do I need to work out every day to get the revenge body, right? Like, what's that about? Like, talk to me about that.
Yeah, so working out every day, obviously, it really depends on what this entails, right? Like, what are we talking about? What are the exercises that you're doing?
Mm-hmm.
There's two things that you have to factor into your workout routine. Number one is just the volume of the work that you're doing, and number two would be the intensity of the work that you're doing. So if you're working very, very intensely, then it might be a good idea, and I'm specifically speaking to guys over 40, it might be a good idea to take the day off. Or if you have a day where there's just a tremendous amount of volume, you may want to take the next day off as well. But the biggest determiner is going to be really just based on how you feel that next day. You would be amazed, you'd be surprised at how well your body can adapt, especially if you're training and you're progressing yourself in the right way. If you're allowing your body to kind of adapt to doing higher volume stuff, to doing higher intensity stuff, you'd be surprised. You can get away with doing it every single day. Like, there's guys in their 40s and 50s that are training at a pretty high intensity, and even with higher volumes, only because they've progressed themselves the right way to allow their body to adapt. And if you think about like athletes, there's a lot of athletes out there, or even like construction workers, they're out there doing it. Like, they're working hard every single day. Yeah. So you can do it. You've got to be a little bit careful with it. And again, I think it's just a matter of kind of listening to your body. If you wake up, like I always tell my clients, like, if you wake up and you're like really, really sore, or you had a really bad night of sleep and you're just exhausted, it's better just to take the day off.
I mean, you can't be like David Goggins and put Legos in your sneakers and just run through it any day. Every day,
right?
Go hard. Yeah. Okay, yeah. I got
that guy. Yeah, but I mean, it goes to show you just what you're capable of, right? Right. I mean, I think he's way on the extreme end, but it's still not to say like he's out there like hitting the pavement every single freaking day, right? And he hasn't died. He hasn't died. It's amazing. Your body is capable, I always tell people, like, your body is capable of so much more than what you think. I think one of the biggest mistakes a lot of guys make is we if we've been off for a while, we try to jump in a little bit too fast, a little bit too hard. Right. So when I'm saying these things, like, there's a right way and a wrong way to kind of develop your physical capacities. But once you've developed them in a smart way, you'd be amazed at just what you can do on an every single day basis. It's crazy.
All right. So I know for some people, although every day could be ideal, I mean, they're working a traditional 9 to 5, whatever that might look like. Right. And so they may not technically have the time, right, to work out every day. For the people who do, God bless them, they can, maybe they're in retirement and they've got the time to work out every day. Right. Or their work is flexible enough where they can work about 4 hours a day or 6 hours a day and still have time. So if you're working out every day, or if you're working out every other day or 2 or 3 days a week, how long should someone be working out for, right? So you're over 40, you're over 50, like what's the duration that allows someone to feel like, okay, I'm putting in work and enough work and time for me to expect results, right? So what's been your experience as far as time and to see the fruits of the work?
Yeah. So if you're someone who is very busy, which a lot of obviously 40, 50, 60-year-olds, they've got a job, maybe they've got some kids that they're still taking care of,
Yeah.
there's a lot of responsibilities. So time is probably one of the biggest hurdles for a lot of these guys. So when we talk about like bare minimums, I would always like to see someone who's really serious
Yeah.
about their fitness, their health, their well-being, who really wants to take great care of themselves.
Yeah.
I would say make it a priority every single day, at least 30 minutes where you spend time on yourself, whether that's like formal exercise or even just going out for a walk with your significant other, your girlfriend, your kids, whatever. Do some sort of work on yourself, at least 30 minutes every single day. If we're talking about like getting in the gym and doing like strength training or some sort of higher intensity conditioning stuff, I still think the 30 minutes is a great time domain that you can get a lot of really good work in.
Yeah.
But I would say a minimum of 3 days a week, like just bare minimum. If you can spend that time on yourself, doing some movement training, some strength training, and developing your cardiorespiratory system, like 30, 45 minutes is probably the bare minimum 3 times a week that you're going to have to do to really see, a decent result.
Okay. So those 30 minutes a day over the course of 3 days is about an hour and a half a week, right?
Yeah, that's not very much, right?
Okay. Yeah, fair enough. The question that I'm sure that some of the people who are listening in and watching, they're thinking, is that enough time for me to get shredded? Is that enough time for me to get ripped? Right.
Yeah.
So what's your thoughts on that? Like, is that enough time for them to get the gains that they're looking for?
Yeah, and I think like when we talk about like, because whenever I hear the word shredded or ripped or cut, like these kind of words, right? It's really we're trying to get rid of any excess body fat that might be hanging around.
Right.
Right. So if somebody's telling me that that's one of their goals, then I know that there's some sort of a body fat issue here. And it's really, really hard. I would argue almost impossible unless you're like a career athlete, somebody that's working out like 3-4 hours a day, right? You can't outwork a bad diet, meaning that even if you bust your ass within that 30-minute period of time, there's a really good chance if you're not taking care of your nutrition that you're not going to see any of the aesthetic benefits, or the aesthetic benefits are going to be very minimal. I can still make you stronger. I can get you to run faster. I can get you more flexible. I can get you feeling better. We can give you more energy. Like all of these other things can happen just through exercise. But I can't tell you how many people that I work with, if they're not willing to do the nutrition part of it, that they may even get fatter as they get fitter. Let me say it again. They'll get fatter as they get fitter.
Okay.
Right? Wow. So we have to separate the two, right? So fitness is a really good tool for developing your fitness, right? Improving your work capacity, making you stronger, making you, improving your cardiorespiratory endurance. You can do all of those things and be kind of a badass, but be carrying around an extra 20, 30, 40 extra pounds, right?
Hey, all right.
So unless you plan on spending 4 hours a day training in your sport or, whatever, if you don't have that kind of time, then you have to put more of your time and more of your effort into your nutrition habits. You have to really focus on those things, because you've heard the saying before, like abs are made in the kitchen. That's true. Like it really is. Okay. Unless you're Michael Phelps, where you're spending 4 hours in a pool. You really got to focus on your nutrition.
Okay, so now you just opened up another can of worms, because I know that in all the questions that I asked, not too many of them were like food or nutrition oriented. So so now let's say ideally we got 30 minutes, every other day, plus or minus. You got 3 days a week, right? So you're putting in 30 minutes, 3 days a week, to do whatever the exercises are that will benefit. So now we're talking about dieting. So again, for anybody who's like time strapped, right? Because that's usually where we get busted. Like this is why we, sometimes we'll grab the microwavable meal, right? That says, hey, this is going to be good for you. This is going to be, all these benefits, right? That we kind of in the back of our minds feel like, I don't know about that, but I don't have time to prepare a full meal. Therefore, right? So talk to me about the nutrition part. Like, what are the minimal lean requirements of having a nutrition plan that is consistent with this 30-minute routine for me to get the best results, right? Like, what does your experience have to, shed light on, have in order for us to get some light on this?
Yeah. So I always want to approach this from an athlete perspective, right? So we're trying to make people who are they don't just look apart, but they're also high performers, right? So they're also very strong. They're also have some endurance. We want them to be high performance machines. So when we're looking at a nutrition plan to support an athletic life, to support this active life, it's going to look very different than like if I was training to be a bodybuilder and I was going into my cutting phase because I had to get up on a stage wearing my little bikini, right? So you can completely starve yourself, you can dehydrate yourself. Like, there's lots of ways to get someone shredded, but that would be kind of what I would consider to be anti-athletic. So let's talk about, like, what do athletes do, right? When athletes want to be shredded, right? What is the plan or the program that they use? And it's very different, I find, than like the normal kind of recommendations that you're going to find around nutrition. Because normally it's like reduce your calories, right? Like, if you want to lose body fat, you've got to cut your calories. You have to make sure that you're expending more than you're taking in, right? It becomes a very simple equation. Right. And it's like 3,500 calories is a pound of fat. If I eat more than 3,500 calories above and beyond, then I'm going to put a pound of fat on, and vice versa, right? So instead of looking at it from a calorie in, calorie out standpoint, instead, let's focus on just the quality of the food that you're eating. So instead of quantity as being like the go-to, we're going to go to the quality. So not quantity, we're going to focus on quality. Okay. Right? We have a very simple prescription that we use that I've been using with my athletes for years and years and years that works really, really well. Okay. Because they're not interested in like tracking all their calories and counting their macros and tracking all these numbers, right? Athletes don't do that. People think like these athletes do that, but they really don't. Yeah. That's like the last thing they want to do. They want to train and they want to make sure they have enough energy to be able to train and perform well, right? Right. So we don't want to focus on quantity. We want to focus on quality. And I'll give you the prescription because it's really simple. And for anybody watching this, like, get a piece of paper and a pen and write this down, because I want you to memorize this because it can be the game changer for you. And here it is. It's meat, veggies, nuts, seeds, and fruit. Meat, veggies, nuts, seeds, and fruit. So 5 things. Okay. Meat, veggie, nuts, seeds, fruit. Like, memorize that. Like, build it into your brain. Like, write it down and put it on your fridge because it's that important. Yeah. If you can consume the majority of your foods from those categories, usually that's the only thing that we need to change as far as nutrition goes to get someone not just high performance, but also looking the part.
Gotcha. So,
that's the game changer.
So in order for me to get right, I need to stick with meats, seeds, nuts, and fruits.
Meat, veggies, nuts, seeds, and fruit.
Okay.
Meat, veggie, nuts, seeds, fruit.
So aren't nuts also kind of like seeds, but not?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I wouldn't get too lost in the weeds here. Keep it fairly simple. Okay. When you look at your plate, it's like, okay, what's on my plate? Is it a meat? Is it a veggie? Is it a nut? Is it a seed? Or is it a fruit? And if it's not from those categories, then it's the quote unquote other food, right? It's something that would not be in the prescription.
Gotcha.
So when we prescribe nutrition to athletes, this is the framework that we give them. We want them to have a framework to follow. And here's kind of the other interesting thing, because I've been doing this for so long, is you don't need to be perfect to be quote unquote shredded, lean, right? Everybody thinks like you have to be right on to the prescription. And we actually measure this. It's one of the things that we do in Athletic After 40. There's a simple way of doing it. I call it the RFP. It's the real food percentage. And let me just give you an example. If I had a 100% day today, it would just mean that everything I consumed came from those categories. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
I find that the quote unquote, the magic happens somewhere around 70, 80%. So that means you don't have to be perfect and you can still get these results.
Gotcha. So if 70% of what's on your plate is a meat, a nut, a seed, a vegetable, or a fruit, right? You're good.
Yeah. And scale that out. So think bigger picture.
Yeah.
Days, right? If we track that number over days, weeks, months, years, if you're living 80%, if that's like your standard, out of every 10 things that go into your face, 8 of them come from the category of meat, veggie, nuts, seeds, and fruit, you're going to be, in an amazing spot.
Okay. All right.
So you can still have a piece of pizza, you can have a beer, you can do these things that,
Right. And so as long as 70 to 80% of that is in those categories over the course, generally speaking, of one's diet, right?
Yes.
They got it covered. So then here's the other question. So I think it's a myth now that everything's kind of been like dismantled, generally speaking, in the health and wellness world, that we should be having 3 meals a day. So then what does this mean as far as meals, right? Like how many meals a day should I be ingesting or eating in order for me to see the swole effect, right? To get ripped, to get jacked.
Yeah. So how often should you be eating in a day, right?
Yeah.
And it used to be like in the bodybuilding world, it was like 5 or 6 small meals. I shouldn't say 5 or 6 small meals a day. It was like 5 or 6 big meals a day. You want to eat all the time to be able to gain muscle size. And there's something to that. Like if your goal is to put on some size, some muscle mass, you generally do want to eat a little bit more throughout your day. So a lot of this kind of depends on the person and what we're trying to achieve. So you would generally want to eat a little bit more than maybe what you normally do. And where I find that this works really well is if you're staying, again, within this prescription, meat, veggie, nuts, seeds, and fruit, right? Kind of the old school bodybuilding thing was like, they would go through these different phases. They would go through like a bulking phase where they would literally just try to put calories into their face. They would go to the buffet. They didn't care that they gained a bunch of body fat. They just wanted to get as big as they could, right? As an athlete, we're not interested in that. There are times where maybe we want to put a little bit of muscle tissue on, but we want to minimize the fat gain, right? Yeah. So you can eat a little bit more. You can eat a few more times throughout your day. I'm going to say anywhere from 3 to 6, just depending on what your goal is, right? Mm-hmm. And as long as you're staying within that quality prescription and you're doing some form of resistance training, that's really, really important. Like that's super, super important. You have to be lifting some heavy shit. Right? Because that sends some signals into the system that, look, this guy, he wants to lift this heavy things. So maybe it's a good idea to develop some muscle tissue, right? So as far as times a day, I'm going to say somewhere between 3 and 5. But then there are some little asterisks that we can put on this. Could be a really long conversation. If you're someone who's interested in really getting lean, there is this thing that you've probably heard of before, but it's intermittent fasting. Have you heard of that? Yeah. And it's interesting, and I've really been fascinated by it because there's a lot of good research to show what happens to the human body at the cellular level when our body is not processing food. right? Meaning that like if I have no food in my gut, my body's not processing that food, I'm in a different physiological state than I am when I'm consuming food and when my body's processing food. It's kind of like we're in a different physiological state when we're sleeping and when we're awake. It's the same kind of concept when you're not, when you're not processing food when you are.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of health benefits to both.
Okay.
So at the cellular level, like there's a tremendous amount of health benefit to like not processing food, and there's a tremendous health benefit to processing food. Yeah. So we want to kind of balance those things out. And it's been really interesting to watch the science on this. And there's even some correlation with fat loss. So if you're someone who's trying to lose fat, it might be a good idea to not eat 5 times a day. It might be a good idea to install some sort of an intermittent fasting kind of protocol. And there's lots of different ways to kind of approach that. And it takes a little bit of testing and a little bit of finesse around that, because you also want to come up with something that's going to fit into your life. But I've found a lot of success with that. If we can add that on top of the quality food, and we do some sort of an intermittent fasting kind of protocol, it's been pretty amazing. It's been pretty dramatic. And it's something that I've been doing for years and years and years. Yeah. It's one of my staples.
Yeah. So what you've been doing for years and years as far as your health routine, or as far as coaching people to be able to do?
Both. So I recommend it to athletes, and I've been doing it personally for years. Yeah. For years. Yeah.
So basically what you've done for years is, of course, maintain a decent ratio of 70-80% of the foods being from those 5 food groups. Having, 3 to 6 meals a day, depending on sort of what day it is. And then somewhere in there, fasting, right? And based on whatever your goals are, if you're looking to kind of get lean and get shredded. And like you said, resistance working out, which requires that you're basically, along with eating, you're conditioning your body to build up the right parts of your body with the food that you are taking, right?
It's a little bit different than that. It's more systemic. Like it's systemic, meaning like when we load the system with weight. If I were to take the human, and they've done tests on this, they've done research on this, but if I take the human body and I put weight on it, so we practice squatting or deadlifting or Olympic lifting or pressing or whatever, and we give you a good enough dose of that, your body will ramp up like testosterone, which is one of the things that we all know has some effect to, it sends some signals to the muscle tissue to say, hey, cells, we need to grow a little bit bigger. We need to create some bigger muscles. And it happens systemically, meaning it happens to all the muscles. So it's not just one, it's like everything, which is really fascinating. And same thing with like growth hormone and insulin growth factor. Like there's this milieu, awesome word, right? Milieu. There's this milieu of these hormones that come in to really signal the system to create more muscle tissue. That's what we want.
And that happens from the lifting, right?
Yeah. And then it has to be supported with good nutrition as well. You have to make sure that you're eating enough.
Yeah. Okay. So, as kind of like I'm seeing it come together, right? So let's say if I dial it back, right? I got my heart broken and I need to get my revenge body, right?
Yeah.
Right. Maybe I'm on my 6th marriage, and I'm saying, all right, I'm done. I got to get myself together, right? Or it's falling apart, and I'm trying to get it back together. Maybe it's the last one, and I'm trying to make sure this one works, and I'm trying to make sure that I'm a physical specimen. So the kickoff is, one, I do a Google search, and I say, how do I get my body right? How does a 40-year-old get their body right? Right. And then here comes, Mr. Athletic after 40, who pops up in there. And I said, all right, let me reach out to him. And basically, let's say or if I was trying to DIY the whole thing, right? The process would be, 1, I'm going to work out at least 3 days a week, right? 2, those 3 days a week that I'm going to work out, I'm going to work out at least 30 minutes. Okay.
Minimum. Yep.
Minimum. Now, although I haven't gotten into it, and I'm sure people are curious about it, there's a specific set of exercises that I should be doing in that 30 minutes. Otherwise, the whole thing falls apart.
That's really important. I'm glad you brought that up, because like that's really, really important. Yeah.
Right. If I don't do those exercises, I don't get to get my swole body. Okay.
Yes.
All right.
So important.
At the very least, 30 minutes, at least 3 days a week.
Yeah.
Specific set of exercises, right? So that part, okay, crew, I can chalk that off, right? Check marks next to it. And then I have to take into consideration that there's a specific way that I need to eat in order to have those 30-minute sessions really matter. Otherwise, I'm going to end up fatter, although I'm fitter.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You could go down that road.
Yeah, could end up fatter and fitter, right? Which is not where I'm trying to go, because I'm trying to get swole, right? Okay, so 3 days a week, 30 minutes of specific set of exercises. In this case, if I'm working with the world-class coach here, Tony Bevilacqua, I get to get those exercises blueprinted for me to build my athletic after 40 body, right? Now, so the food part involves those 5 food groups, and 70 to 80% of those food groups representing what I consume on any given day or in any given week. Okay. All right. So that lift heavy part, or the not heavy, yeah, although it involves it, but it's a certain weight training threshold for me to be working within in order for all these things to come together. And so this leads me to start to think or anticipate that there's got to be kind of like a model or something that you've kind of drawn up, I'm sure, somewhere that says, all right, so here are the 4 legs or 5 legs of this athletic after 40 body. 1, 3 to X amount of days of exercising, 30 minutes per session, these particular sets of exercises, this specific set of types of foods, right, that are like within limits, right, of what you, in order for all of this to work. And then overall says, all right, this is the blueprint, this is the game plan, and you got to give yourself at least 90 days, right? Not necessarily consecutively, but within a 90-day window. If these things are being touched on, you're going to end up, having the body that you really are going for, right? And be, of course, by default, fit and athletic, right? And I like what you said about athletic, in that it's really an active lifestyle, right? Like, athletic doesn't mean that you're trying to get back to the Olympics again, or trying to compete at a higher level like you did in high school, although it could include that if you want to do it for your age range. But it's really about being able to engage in the quality of life activities that you really want to, right? So if you want to go hiking, you have the conditioning to be able to handle that without worrying about breaking something. If you want to go jet skiing or, parasailing or whatever it is, you don't even want to have to think about, am I going to get hurt? Is something going to get dislocated? Or am I going to wake up tomorrow in pain, right? Like, you don't even want those things to be an issue. So this is essentially sort of what the athletic after 40 sort of model embodies or entails. Is that about right?
Yeah. It was always, I never wanted to be, because there's a lot of what I'm going to call smoke and mirrors, right? There's a lot of guys walking around out there who you would walk by them on the street and you go like, wow, like that guy actually looks pretty damn good. He must be really fit. He might have abs, he might be pretty lean, he might be lean, he might have some big muscles, right? And you look at him and you're like, dang, that's good. And then you see him at the bar that night and he's smoking a cigarette and he's, 3 sheets to the wind.
Right.
What's going on there? Because there's a lot of ways to get that aesthetic.
Yeah.
And I get it. Like, a lot of guys want to look that way. Like, I understand,
right,
but I'm not interested in that. And it's just my background as an athlete and working with athletes. I'm not interested in smoke and mirrors. I'm more interested in how well you perform. I'm interested in your health, your well-being, and then allowing that aesthetic to be more of an outcome of just living what I call the athlete life.
Yeah.
And this is what I'm kind of laying out. When we work with athletes, we want to develop their strength conditioning. We've got to be very, very efficient, 30, 45 minutes of doing some very specific exercises that deliver the most bang for the buck. Athletes aren't interested in spending hours and hours in the gym.
That's right.
Right. And as a guy over 40, you probably don't want to spend hours and hours in the gym. Like, we don't want to do that. We want to be out enjoying our life, right? Out doing things, being active. Right. So with nutrition, we don't want to be counting calories or doing, tracking our macros and putting our food on scales and reducing our calories all the time. Because you know what happens when you reduce your calories? Your energy levels go down and then you can't be active. Right. If I reduce an athlete's calories, their performance declines. Yeah. I used to see this with women all the time. They wouldn't tell me. They'd be like, all of a sudden they're tired all the time and their performance would go down because we're always measuring performance. We're always looking at those numbers. And, I always knew it. Like, you're not sleeping at night because you're staying up too late, right? Yeah. Playing on the iPad or whatever, right? Or you're not eating enough food. And most of the time, it was they weren't eating because they were trying to lose weight or whatever. So you got to make sure you eat, right? And it's the quality of the food that's more important than the quantity of the food. The quality is the magic. Quality is the magic. It takes care of the quantity. So for nutrition, I kind of separate like these two buckets. There's nutrition and there's fitness. We want them both working together, but they both have kind of their recommendations, right? And if you think of nutrition and you think of like a triangle, I love triangles because they have a foundation, because we have to have foundations. The foundation, of course, is quality. And then sort of the next level up from the quality is the timing. And we talked a little bit about like intermittent fasting. For most guys over 40, when they come to me, they want to lose some body fat. So if that's the case, and like 9 times out of 10, that's one of the issues that they're dealing with. Right. And I'm always going to, most of the time, once we get the quality figured out, we will install some sort of a fasting kind of strategy. And we want to keep it pretty, I don't want to be too aggressive with that, because again, the goal is not to reduce calories. It's not to starve someone. You can still eat as much as you want within your window, but we still want to take advantage of some of those health benefits. And there's even some connection with weight loss there. So we're not trying to starve someone, but we're trying to install a really effective strategy to improve your overall health and to lose some of that extra body fat. So we would focus on the quality first, then we would go to timing. There are very, very few cases, like literally in my last 20 years, there's been like maybe 3 people that we had to work on quantity. And usually it's somebody who legitimately has some kind of like eating disorder, right? And I generally don't work with those folks. So there is that, like at the tip of the pyramid, there is the quantity up there because it does have some bearing. But if we can figure out the quality and we can figure out the timing, we don't have to go to quantity. Like never. Yeah. I haven't tracked a calorie in like 16 years. I can see my abs. And I guarantee there's days that I eat way too much. But I always eat from those categories, right? Yeah. And then the fitness, we've got some things, some frameworks in our fitness too that we want to focus on. Yeah. I think like quality, right? We want to do quality things. We want to make sure we're doing the right exercises that are going to enhance our physical capacities to be stronger and to have a bigger gas tank.
Cool. So that's essentially, I think in this round, from the combination of, although sort of all funny scenarios of got my heart broken, now I'm back in the gym again to get my heart right, to trying to restore and spark love and be a specimen that's worth keeping around.
And just to be confident, right? Like to be confident, because when you look good, as you know, like you are I'm like looking at you like, dude, how are you 45? You look like you're 30. Dude. Seriously, my goodness.
Yeah, it's part of the secret formula, the secret sauce. So
yeah, man. But yeah, I mean, you get it, right? Like confidence, and you just want to feel confident. And I know that I'm more confident when I look good, right? Right. Like if I take my shirt off at the beach and I look better than 99% of the people there, because quite honestly, it's a sad state of affairs, right? Like the general population is not doing well. Yeah. So if you want to be in the 1%, you've got to take care of yourself. But then there is a level of confidence there. To be in the 1%, you've got to do some work. Yeah. But at the same time, it doesn't have to be like it doesn't. It's like, to me, it's not even that it's not even that hard.
You're right. No, you're completely
Not
right.
even that hard.
3 days a week, 30 minutes of a specific set of movements and exercises, which we can talk about in another session.
Yeah.
I feel like people are like, oh, but what are the exercises? Oh, you're gonna have to come and check it out. And so 30 minutes, 3 days a week. I think people can afford to do that. Like I waste 30 minutes like down the rabbit hole of like Instagram reels, man. I'm embarrassed to report.
Yeah.
And so I know I got at least 30 minutes of doing exercises in me 3 days a week. Okay. And so 3 days. So if a guy says, hey, look, I need to get back into my swole mode, I'm gonna choose 3 days a week, 30 minutes. I'm going to make sure I'm eating from my primary 5 categories. I'm going to do my specific set of exercises. Trying to think of anything else. And I'm going to commit to it over the course of 30 days. And if I run into trouble, of course, I can pick up a phone, or if I'm in a Facebook group or something like that with you, I can get a little bit of a 911 call, 911, what's your emergency? I think I just ate too many burgers, you can kind of help me or help whoever correct course. That's of course simple enough, but at the same time, I'm sure you do the mindset coaching too, where like people got to really get their mind wrapped around like they're worth it, they deserve it. This is their time, do they want to be around for their significant other and for their children's children? You know what I mean? Like, depending on what their scenario is, they got to kind of get their mind all locked and tuned in to this is the vehicle that they're going to take in order for them to, live out that next, 30, 40, or however many years they want to live out. And do it without fear of falling apart.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, like this is like the biggest part of this whole thing. It's the mindset of it. It's the thoughts and the beliefs that are in your head that create your habits, right?
Yeah.
And when I work with athletes compared to, so I spent all these years, right, working with all these amazing athletes, and it's a different mindset. It's a different way of thinking, right? These are high performance people who want to legitimately be there and they want to be better. They're not afraid to do the hard thing, right? As long as they know that they're getting some progress. Like they actually like the challenge. Like they want to show up and do that.
Right.
And then I get into like, I'm exposed to, we'll call it the normal kind of fitness world, right? Where you go into Gold's Gym and there's just a completely different vibe than when you walk into a Division I strength and conditioning center, right? Like it's a totally different vibe, a totally different space.
Yeah.
And what I find in like the normal kind of health, fitness, nutrition world is everybody is kind of like, it's much more short game. Like I got to lose 20 pounds and they find some plan, and they lose 20 pounds, like a well-intentioned person. That's not that hard to do. Like most guys have lost 20, 30, maybe even 40 pounds. But once they hit the goal, it's like, then it's over. Right. And then the weight comes back. So it seems to be so much more of a short game kind of thing.
Yeah.
90-day program, they've been on a diet for 30 days or a 6-week challenge. Like that's like, do you ever like see that for like football players? Like we're going to do a, 6 weeks, we're going to make you an all-star football player. Like that doesn't happen. Right. Like it's way more long game. When you sign up for a sport, you're kind of like, you're in it. Like you're not like ready to hit the door once you make so many tackles. Like It's not over. Like there's more. Like you keep going and you keep going and you keep going and you keep pushing yourself and challenging yourself. So like the mindset is so different.
Mm-hmm.
So that's been one of the biggest challenges I see, and it's one of the things that I really want to. One of my biggest things is trying to change someone's view of themselves. I want them to identify a little bit differently. And I provide the identity, I call it the athlete identity.
Yeah.
Right. And if you're listening to this right now, you might be, and if you were an athlete before, this should resonate with you. Because if you were an athlete before, you sort of understand it. It's in you. The athlete identity is in there. right? We just got to sort of extract it from you again and kind of get you touched back into that.
Yeah.
But it's a journey.
Mm.
You know, it's not just an end game. Like we set a North Star of being able to perform really, really well as an athlete, and we show up for practice every day and we do that thing and we eat better foods. Why do you do that? Because I'm an athlete.
That's right.
Because that's who I am.
Right.
Right. And we lose that. And then we just start chasing these silly goals, and we hit the goals because we're well intentioned, but we never stick to it. Right. We have to change who we are as people and latch onto something a little bit different. Yeah. And that's how you become successful. Yeah. You know, like I always tell the story, like when I go to a birthday party and with my son and someone asks me if I want cake, it's so easy for me to say no. It's like just automatic. And there's always somebody there that's going to be like, oh yeah, Tony doesn't eat cake. What's wrong with you? Like there's always that couple or that guy or that girl that's like wants to throw, but I'm so good with it that I'm just like, cause that's who I am, right? Like I'm the healthiest motherfucker on this planet. That's my identity. True story. There's a whole story behind that. Like, I've held that identity for like 15, 16 years, but that's who I am as a person. So for me to say yes to the cake is so incongruent with who I am that like I feel resistance. Like I can't even say it. I can't say yes, you know? And then people are like, oh, well, Tony doesn't like cake. And I'm like, no, it has nothing. Like I love cake. I love cake. I love pizza. I used to love beer. But you know what? That's not who I am, right? Like, so there is the essence of like your long game success, because everybody wants sustainability, but nobody knows how to get it. But you're not going to get sustainable results until you change who you are.
Yeah. Wow.
Right? You need new thoughts. You need new beliefs.
Yeah.
You need to start thinking differently about yourself.
Right.
Right. And when you can start thinking differently about yourself, you start making different choices. And then those choices can lead into habits.
Right.
And then when your habits change, you change.
That's right.
Like the whole thing changes.
Yeah. That's right.
Right. You start showing up completely different.
Yeah. Yeah. Very, very true. Very.
Sorry, I got on a little bit of a soapbox there, but it's just so important. Like that's the holy grail, is that right there. That's more important than anything else.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can look at yourself in the mirror and you can say, I am an athlete.
Yeah.
Or I am I'm the healthiest motherfucker on this planet. You know, if you can give yourself that label,
right,
then all you gotta do is act. Then you gotta, even if you don't truly believe it yet,
right.
There's this mentor that you know who talks about delusional optimism. When I heard that, I'm like, that's exactly it.
Yeah.
If you're not there yet, you need delusional optimism, and you have to believe in it so much that it's real, and you do it every day. And the more you do it, the more you practice it, it just becomes. Yeah. It's automatic.
Amen. I approve that message. 1,000%. The delusional optimistic athlete I am, right? I can see myself parasailing right now. You know?
Yeah, man. Like you got it. You got to own it.
Yeah. So, well, good. Well, what I look forward to in our next conversations are one, really, fleshing out that whole mental framework, right? Because as I think about it, naturally, I think we are drawn to the physiques that we see online and saying like, yeah, I want that, or I need that. And if I were to have that body, that's going to give me the status, the props that I, I'm going to get back to the haters, right? Like there's all these kind of motivating, low hanging fruit motivations, right? To get back in the gym. But to your point, those motivations sometimes are short-lived, right? Because at some point you prove the haters wrong. What, now, okay, now you got the revenge body. Now what? Like, I mean, what are you going to do with that now, right? So to your point, having the mindset for the long game and recognizing that you actually have to evolve to be someone who an athletic body serves, right? You got to have like a different set of aims in order for you to say, all right, well, you know what? This aim that I'm looking to experience requires an athletic, mindset, right? In order for me to reach it. I think that's a conversation definitely worth having and expanding on, because I think because that, you know, the low-hanging fruit of, you know, seeing the guy who's like super ripped and thinking like, oh man, I need to get there is just not going to cut it, right? I mean, 3 months out, it's just not gonna get it done. And then the other thing that you mentioned, I'm drawing a blank on it right now, which was
I think back to, I just want to like interject here, but like, I think back to in high school,
yeah,
you know, we can all think back to high school, right? We all remember our times, you know, with the people that we went to school with and that. And like, I remember like the athletes that I looked up to. Like, I was like, oh my God, like that, I want to be just like him. You know, I want to be just like Scott, because he was a freaking monster, right? He was just this great athlete. And he was super jacked all the time and just looked the part, played the part, was good at every sport he ever played. Like, I just wanted to be like that guy, right? And now I still know Scott, and he's a disaster. He's a freaking mess, you know, like he's a shell of his previous self, which is kind of sad. But at the same time, it's like the long game is what counts, right?
yeah,
Like, I kicked his ass for the last 15 years. Like, I've kept myself in much better shape. I look better. I feel better. Like, you know, he hasn't taken good care of himself, you know, and he's fallen off the cliff many, many years ago.
yeah.
So it's all about, like, if you really want to get the revenge body,
Yeah.
get it and hold on to it. You know, like, don't lose it.
That's
like,
right.
Like, it's not just about the revenge. Like, think long game. You know?
Yeah. That's awesome. And then the other part, which is being, I guess you could say it's kind of mindset is the scripting, right? The scripting of your own thought process to take actions and develop those habits that are consistent with this new person that you're becoming, right? And I think that's a conversation that is not as popular, right? I mean, like, there's like mindset coaching, but like the relationship between having the athletic body and the mindset that it takes. I see this also, especially in the financial world, right? Like, if you really want to be at X amount per month or per year, you know, you got to say, okay, well, where does my money go, right? How much time am I putting in to monitor and review and see what's happening with it, and what muscle do I need to build, right? Financially, in order for me to thrive for the long haul. And the more you realize like how much your self-talk is displacing actions, the more you realize like, wait, you're never going to get there, right? Because you're telling yourself you don't deserve it, or you can't afford XYZ, you know, an investment, et cetera, right? Same thing with the body. Long-term investment into the body, into having the athletic experience and being able to do what you want to do requires those kind of mental shifts for you to feel like, yeah, I make these kinds of investments because this is consistent. You know, like, hey, I say no to cake because, you know, I'm an athlete. Yeah, because I'm an athlete, right? But and the other thing that I'm also reminded of is, and it was just so sort of like embarrassingly true, which is we don't even realize or fully assess or even identify with how much fitness culture is saturated with bodybuilding culture. Right? Like, it's not like the lines are so blurred and it's so interwoven. I mean, like, you know, there's fitness culture with bodybuilding mindset.
I love that. That's
right?
that's a really, really good way to put it. You're absolutely right.
And so the bodybuilding mindset, you know, asks for you to, you know, keep gazing to look at how many abs can you see now, and then, you know, how your tri is coming in. But and so like when you don't see those things, but you are like 10 times stronger than you've ever been, you feel like a loser, right? Because, or, you know, it's an exaggeration, but like, you might be stronger, more than likely you are stronger, but you feel like it's not showing up in the physical realm, and now you feel like your workouts aren't working, or that some way somehow you're letting yourself down, et cetera, versus really identifying with the overall journey of the body by default, in whatever way it needs to show up will show up, but you got to keep pressing on for the athletic trajectory, right? and have the athletic mindset versus the bodybuilding mindset. Because athletes come
bodybuilding is not about performance. I mean, I know some of these guys are lifting big weights and stuff, like I get it, but they're not really interested in how much weight they lift. Otherwise they'd be weightlifters, like competing in the sport of weightlifting, or they'd be power lifters competing in the sport of powerlifting. Like it's a tool that they use to get the aesthetic, but it's not their interest. They are only interested in aesthetics. They want to be able to stand on a stage and flex their muscles and get a trophy. Like that's what they're trying to do. And I totally respect that. Like if that's really what you want to do, that's awesome. I love it. That's great. They're incredibly disciplined and amazing athletes, in that respective sport, but it's really all just about the aesthetic.
Yeah.
So that's never been I did play in that world a little bit, but I've always been interested in like true human performance, working with athletes. And then what I find is the same strategies that I use to develop the core fitness, the strength and the conditioning of elite level athletes, because I'm a strength conditioning coach for these folks, right? So when I develop their strength conditioning, this core level of competency, it makes their performances better. And that carries over into 40, 50, and 60-year-olds. Yeah. If we can give you this core level of competency around your fitness, your performance, it lends itself really well to the stuff that you want to do as a 40-year-old, 50-year-old, 60-year-old. Yeah. Even though you might not be playing a specific sport, the sport is now life. There's known and unknown. We've got to be prepared for all of it. Yeah. Like you're going to get way more value by doing this than you are just chasing this, this specific aesthetic that bodybuilders kind of carry, that they're chasing. And you're right, like the bodybuilding world, what makes me a little bit crazy. So bodybuilding became very, very popular, of course, with Arnold Schwarzenegger in Venice Beach way back in the day. And that was like the first kind of like gym, right? There wasn't like gyms weren't a thing. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, some other gyms started popping up around the country to mimic what Venice Beach was doing. So you saw more and more of these gyms kind of pop up, but gyms were specifically designed for bodybuilders because people wanted to be like Arnold. Yeah. So the only people going to the gym were like dudes who wanted to be bodybuilders. So it was this kind of like small underground kind of community, right? And then equipment manufacturers came into it and they started designing equipment specifically around the bodybuilding methodologies. So the steel makers started making these, these pieces, and they put, and what is the methodology of bodybuilding? Yeah. Take the human body, break it down into a bunch of individual parts. Yeah. So now the equipment manufacturers are like, so you mean all I got to do is like, I could make this big, beautiful piece of steel machine, and the only thing it's going to do is work on the bicep. Right. Right. You sit in this beautiful, looks like a car, like a new car, right? Yeah. And you sit down, you put your arms over that pad, and you do those bicep curls, right? Like you're working one muscle, right? Everything else is off. Like you're just working that one thing. Yeah. And that machine is like $6,000. I bought them. I've filled gyms with them. It's like $6,000 for a bicep machine. $6,000. And like 60% of that is all profit, right? Like it's crazy, the markups on these exercise equipment. So these gyms start buying it because it's beautiful, and you got to put something in your gym, right? You can't just have an empty space. Right. So these gyms, and this just kind of perpetuates, and it grows and grows and grows. Next thing you know, now that fitness is kind of taken over, and people of all ages and all, walks of life are showing up at the gym now because they want to be healthier, but they're still being put into this bodybuilding box. That's still the traditional style of at least resistance training that's being taught in most of the gyms. Yeah. It's like really, like my grandfather does not need to be doing freaking bicep curls on the machine. He needs to be standing up and moving his body. Yeah. Yeah. It's not general, like the general fitness population. It's doing a disservice to the general population. It's almost, it's like malpractice in my mind. It's like fitness malpractice, but it's not changing anytime soon. Like it's crazy.
That's what you're here for, man. You're the voice that's championing the fitness revolution.
You're hitting all these nerves with me. I'm like getting all excited. I'm sweating.
I remember you making this point, and I feel like I owe it to myself and like anyone else, right, who is in the world of my reach to say, hey, look, by the way, I know you want to work out and do XYZ. Just so you know, right, the gym is set up for the body, for bodybuilders, and not necessarily for you, right? Not that you don't want to build your body, but your intentions around building your body are different than the the original template, right? That these gyms were built around. And like I said, with that bodybuilding mindset, and of course today you have people with the ropes and all the other sort of, athletic exercises that have been inspired by, right? So like again, it kind of, the lines kind of blur a little bit.
It's gotten better. It's gotten better.
At the same time, the obsession that we have to, just like we're counting calories, the obsession that we have to measuring waistlines and scale gazing, it still needs, there's some work to be done there, right? So that's where you come in. So next week, the conversation about mindset, switching our mindset and kind of breaking out of the matrix. Like, like I said, we don't even realize how much our minds are geared towards, if I don't lose this, 5 pounds, if I don't lose this weight handle, then my life is over. These love handles, my life is over, right? Like how to break through that and stay the course, right? Because once we run into the, hey, Tony, I've been at this 30 days. I'm not seeing, I'm not going down a waist size in my pants. What's going on, right? Like how to,
this doesn't work.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Right. How to break past that. I think that would really benefit people tremendously. So today is, so the motives we cover. So there's money, sex, and status. So today we talked about how to, at least the status of our physique, how to focus on doing whatever we need to do. And that requires 3 days in the gym or whatever our workout scenario is, 30 minutes a day, eating from the 5 categories, 70-80%, and having a coach to help us implement. And that's that. And I just realized as I say that we haven't even talked about sleep, right? And the kind of sleep to get. I've got all about that, right?
It's another big thing. It's important.
Big piece. So yeah, so some rich conversations for anybody who really cares enough to say, look, I really need to re-examine why I'm even in the gym, right? If I'm going to be in the gym, let me actually be in the gym, or my record.
Badass, and you get to look good. You get both.
Yeah. Right. So yeah, so it's good stuff. I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a rich and eye-opening conversation, just as this one has been, and yeah, looking forward to getting. I'll work on my schedule to make sure that now that I know, okay, 30 minutes a day, I got to make sure
minimum.
Minimum.
It's kind of like, it's the same bad thing. You get what you put into it, right?
Right.
So you can put your foot on the accelerator pedal by spending a little bit more time, right? If you want faster results, then you want to put in a little bit more time, but 30 minutes minimum, we can get some strength training in. And some of this depends on your personal situation. Mm-hmm. What I find with some guys, a lot of guys over 40, is they have some orthopedic issues that need to be addressed. So it might be 30 minutes, 45 minutes, somewhere in there, depending on what's going on. So everybody's going to be a little bit different, but bare minimum, if we're just talking about the work that you're putting in, the exercise that you're putting in, 30 minutes is about all we need to do. But there might be some other rehab-ish, prehab-ish kind of stuff that you want to add to that as well.
Okay. All right, cool. And I'm sure there's another conversations to be had around that.
Dude, you're never going to get me shut up. I could talk for days and days and tell stories forever. I could never.
Fair enough. But that's the good news, right? Because I imagine, Mike, to some extent, for some people, at some point as they're living the lifestyle, just like we kind of dial into entertainment, like someone who's, former tennis player, loves watching tennis, for them, they can engage and enjoy hearing the conversations and being reminded of why they are who they are and how they are, right? This is kind of part of that that entertainment process, right? Of being able to say, oh yeah, that's right. That is why I don't, drink the way that I used to. It's because I'm an athlete. I'm the healthiest motherfucker on the planet. Right?
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. Man, latch on to whatever identity you can that's going to serve you, right? It's going to change your life.
They get a phone call. Am I going out with you guys tonight? How am I going out with you guys tonight? I'm the healthiest motherfucker in the planet. Why would you ask me that? I can see people doing that. So
yeah.
Cool
well,
enough.
when I did make that decision, when I started telling myself that's who I was, and I started acting as if, because I wasn't, when I brought in the mentality, I wasn't that person, but I just believed it so much that all the people that I used to go to the bar with and drink with eventually stopped calling me. So that's true. Like they don't call you no more.
They picked up what you were putting down, right? Which was, hey, it's like the Tony that you have reached is no longer available, right?
Yeah, it's true, man.
Shenanigans.
It's true.
So, all right, cool enough.